No problem. It's now live.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone, members, officers and members of the public to this meeting of the Planning Control Committee. Before the meeting, I'd like to invite the committee member and scrutiny officer to explain proceedings.
Thank you, Chair. So we have no officers joining us remotely this evening. If a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on the microphone unit. The microphone will light up green and the chair will be alerted of your request to speak. When the chair invites you to speak, your microphone will turn red and will be live, at which point you can speak. When the public participants are invited to speak, their microphones will be made live by the committee officer. When requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on your microphone unit. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room, and the results will be visible on the YouTube stream. In the event of a tied vote, the chair will have the casting vote. Are there any questions before we start the meeting? No, back to you then, Chair.
Thank you. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillors Val Bryant and Alistair Willoughby, and having given due notice, Councillor Nigel Mason will be substituting for Councillor Willoughby. We've got an apology from Councillor Moody, who is attempting to get here and will be arriving hopefully during the course of the meeting at some point, but he's been held up unavoidably for the moment. Minutes of the meeting of the 20th of September 2022, I propose that we take as read and approve the minutes of the meeting on the 20th September as a true record of proceedings. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Allen. And if we'd like to go to the vote on that, when you're ready.
Chair, that motion's carried.
Thank you very much. Notification of any other business. There is none. Chair's announcements. First of all, Judy Billing, MBE. On the 24th of November 2022, Councillor Judy Billing sadly passed away. She'd served as a ward councillor for Hitchin Bearton for over 40 years and had represented Hitchin North at Hertfordshire County Council since 2013. She'll be missed by all, and I ask members and members of the public to observe a minute's silence in her memory. Thank you. And formal tributes will be welcome at the council on the 19th of December. Recording. In accordance with council policy, this meeting is being audio recorded as well as filmed. The audio recordings will be available to view on ModGov and the film recording via the NHDC YouTube channel. Declarations of interest. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under Chair's announcements on the agenda. Clarification for the registered speakers. Members of the public have 5 minutes for each group of speakers, supporters and objectors. There is a separate 5-minute time limit allocated to member advocates. The warning will be given at 4 minutes to alert you that you have 1 minute left. At 5 minutes, you'll be advised that the time allowed has ended and the speaker must cease. Comfort break. I'll take a short comfort break following the conclusion of item 6, land between Royston Road and Cambridge Road, Barkway, to allow for the public to leave the chamber. And I'll have a further short break following the conclusion of item 8, 20 High Street, Baldock. Public participation. Can I confirm that the registered speakers are in attendance? Jacqueline Vita, Amy Cannon, Councillor Gerald Morris, David Fletcher, Rob Brand, Karen Bugler, Councillor Michael Weeks, Councillor Michael Muir, Ewan Courtney Morgan, Toby Shelley, Georgina Porter, Councillor Ian Albert, Diane Burley. Oh, there you are, thank you. Councillor Claire Strong and Colin Weatherall Morris. Thank you very much. So we come now to agenda item 6, which is application 18/01502/OP, land between Royston Road and Cambridge Road, Barkway. Anne MacDonald to present.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. I have a number of quite detailed updates to report. I've received 3 late letters since the report was published. All the updates have been circulated by email, and given they're all quite lengthy, I'm not going to read any of them out in full. The first batch of updates is that I've received late letters from the HCC Growth and Infrastructure team. This notes that since their response was received, they have changed from their toolkit to the guide, which now requires for monitoring fees in the section 106. Oh, can you not hear me? Sorry. Sorry, can you all hear me now? Don't know. That's not on, right? Let's move that out of the way. Right. Sorry, is that better? Yeah. I'll just talk a bit louder. Right, okay, so the first response is from the HCC Growth and Infrastructure team. This notes that since their response was received, they've changed from their toolkit to the guide, which now requires for monitoring fees in the section 106 in addition to the contribution payments. And it has asked that the extra contribution is imposed on the decision requiring fire hydrants, and for fire hydrants to be removed from the section 106 and to be imposed as a condition. Condition 25 is now recommended, requiring for a scheme of fire hydrants. The response also notes some minor typos with regards to a full stop in place of a comma in one of the figures and the names of the inflation payment system. I can confirm that this response has been forwarded to the planning agent and to the council's lawyer, so the section 106 can be amended accordingly. The second update is that Councillor Hill has written in maintaining a position of strong objection to the application, raising concerns regarding ecology and the climate change emergency. The third update is that Barkway Parish Council has maintained a position of objection. They also raised concerns with regards to ecology and have commented on the proposed conditions. My response to the changes with the conditions has been circulated. In summary, 3 of the changes that they've requested, which includes hedge protection, contractor parking being on site, and protection of the use of the bridleway during construction phase, I have supported, and the conditions have been amended on those basis. This application, or can I have the first slide, please?
Anne, could I just, sorry, I just need to interrupt you very briefly, because I think Councillor Hunter wants to declare an interest.
Sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. I did indicate before our officer started. It's quite simple. I have to declare an interest of predetermination, because when I put my response into the local plan, I highlighted this particular site as being one that I felt was unsustainable. So I can speak, I have checked, but I have to leave the room once you start the debate. Thank you kindly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay. Can I have the first slide, please? Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. This application was presented to Planning Control Committee in September. This is an outline application for 140 houses and one shop with all matters reserved apart from the strategic points of highways access with the two existing roads being Cambridge Road and Royston Road. Next slide, please. The application site lies at the northern end of the village and connects Royston Road on the west to Cambridge Road on the east. To the south of the site is the existing development of Periwinkle Close and the village hall, and to the north lies the land of Newsells Park Stud. A public bridleway runs north-south through the site, with a further public bridleway along the northern boundary. This plan is produced from the master planning process to show how the land within the application site is to provide areas of residential development, which is the beige areas, the shop area, which is purple, and open space and landscaping, which are the green areas. The next slide, please. This is a further master planning plan, which provides a possible layout for the development. However, this is an outline application, and with the exception of the 2 points of access, the rest of the site layout may change at the reserved matters stage. Following the adoption of the local plan 2011 to 2031 at full council on the 8th of November, this is now an allocated housing site in the local plan. As a result of this, there is no objection to the principle of this application, which by virtue of being housing development on an allocated housing site is considered to represent sustainable development. A Section 106 agreement is in the final stages of negotiation, and contributions are detailed under paragraph 4.351 in the report. Contributions are being made towards affordable housing to support the building of a single court community sports hall, waste collection and recycling, middle and upper school education, special needs education, library and youth services, and sustainable transport measures. As can be seen from this plan, the area of the reserved school site is retained on the south side of the application site. The report discusses negotiations with Herts County Council, who is the landowner for this area. The site-specific policy for BK3 requires for an area of land for reserved school to be within the overall land allocation area for BK3, which it is. There is no policy criteria to require the delivery of the houses at the same time as the school, and as a result, there is no objection to the reserved school site not being part of the application site area. I now have some photos showing views of the site, so the next slide, please. This is an aerial view showing the site to the north of the village. Next slide, please. This is the view looking north from Periwinkle Close. Next slide, please. This is the view from the top of the bridle path within the application site area looking westward towards Royston Road. Next slide, please. This is the view from the bottom of the bridle path near the school site area looking northwest towards the Royston Road. Next slide, please. This is a view from the top end of the bridle path looking eastwards towards Cambridge Road. Next slide, please. This is the footpath link off Cambridge Road with the east side of the application site behind the fence and the end of the Newsells land on the right side behind the trees. Next slide, please. And this is another view looking westwards from the bridle path. Next slide, please. This is on the bridle path looking westwards with the application site being the trees on the left and the Newsells boundary being on the right. Next slide, please. This application site is rear of the fence on the right side. So again, the Newsells land is to the sort of to the back and the left, and the application site is to the right side behind the gate. Next slide, please. This is Royston Road with the application site behind the hedge line on the left. Next slide, please. This is a view from Royston Road looking east. Next slide, please. And this is the view looking southeast towards the land that will actually form the reserved school site. At the September PCC meeting, the application was deferred on the basis that a full response had not been received from Hertfordshire Ecology. A response has now been received, which is summarised in paragraph 3.18. This states, no objection to the application and for the following reasons. The ecology survey results provide sufficient information to inform determination. The recommendations of the 2022 ecology report should be followed. This includes breeding bat surveys undertaken between March and July, which can be at the reserved matters stage. to secure a landscape and ecology management plan, either by condition or at the reserve matter stage, which is appropriate. Government expectations of biodiversity net gain has not been demonstrated by virtue of failing to meet the minimum of 10% and not satisfying the trading rules. If the local planning authority wishes BNG to be achieved, this application should not be approved until these issues have been addressed accordingly. However, this is currently not mandatory and cannot be issued upon. In the late letters received, both Barkway Parish Council and Councillor Hill have seized on that point and is claiming that the ecology is objecting to the application for that reason. I disagree with that. For the reason that the environment law, which brought in biodiversity net gain, has not yet been enacted, and the local planning policy only requires for any net gain in biodiversity and not a specified amount of gain which this application achieves. So I do not consider that an objection to the application that could be sustained. As set out in the application, this application is recommended for approval subject to the completion of the Section 106 agreement and subject to the conditions and informatives. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do members have any questions of clarification for Anne? No? Fine. In that case, we'll move on to our registered speakers, and we'll begin with our objectors, Jacqueline Peter and Amy Cannon, and you are sharing 5 minutes between you, and we'll start the clock when you begin. Thank you.
There is so much opposition to this development from our MP, our councillors, Barkway Parish Council, on behalf of who I'm speaking, Barkway's residents, and many other groups. The landowner wants the development for profit, and the local plan inspector wanted the development for goodness knows what reason, as he stated that without a school, its sustainability credentials were reduced even further. The officer's report says that the gap between the new development and the village will be built on at some point, so the original reason for refusing this development is no longer applicable. The new housing area will remain remote from the village for the foreseeable future, so the reason for refusal still stands. The planning officer's report points out difficulties the district council might have in maintaining an objection to the development. The parish council would support the district council at appeal if you refuse the application. Refusing the development is the right decision for the future of the village and its residents. The village is at risk of becoming nothing more than a housing estate. Employment opportunities at Newselstad are a scarce resource and are at risk. The right planning decision can ensure that the economic sustainability of Barkway continues. 140 homes will make a minimal contribution to the housing target, but would cause so much damage to Barkway's environment. The County Council's ecology team say the proposal is providing so little in terms of biodiversity net gain that if the planning committee wishes to see a benefit from this development, the application should be refused. The government has tabled amendments to the Levelling Up Bill, which will oblige water companies to clean up rivers by upgrading wastewater treatment works. The aim is to reduce the amount of mitigation developers must provide to offset nutrient pollution, and it recognises that housing developments damage the environment. This developer isn't being asked to offset pollution to our rare chalk stream. We are grateful for the planning officer's acceptance of some of our suggestions for additional conditions should this application receive consent. However, we feel very strongly that a phased infrastructure plan for sewage treatment is not sufficiently stringent to protect the River Quin. The wording of condition 9 might suit Thames Water. We have categorically stated that the sewage treatment infrastructure cannot accommodate the development. We ask you to condition a sewage treatment plant upgrade before any houses are built on the site. Without this, the application should be refused on the basis of insufficient environmental safeguards. We also request that an additional clause to condition 19 stops construction traffic blocking the narrow lanes around the site. This could be achieved through a traffic management plan. We still wish to pursue a method by which a planning consent can require a viability assessment of a shop in Barkway and ask you to look again at how this can be achieved. Otherwise, Barkway and Barley may end up without a local store or a post office. The officer's report refers to the tilted balance being in favour of a conditional permission Once again, we implore you to carefully consider all you hear tonight and the information that has been provided to you to conclude that the application should be refused as an inappropriate and unsustainable development.
I am speaking on behalf of our client, Newsall's Stud Farm. We remain of the view that the development will be harmful, and we urge you in the strongest way to refuse the application. But if you decide that if you decide that it can go ahead, then we urge you to ensure that mitigation measures are in place to manage the harmful impacts and to give the existing business the best opportunity to survive. The report sets out that many of our concerns are not for consideration now, but rather should be dealt with the reserve matter stage. This position is wrong. Granting outline planning permission now will only establish the principle of development, but will also establish the parameters.
Just one more minute.
It is imperative to get the parameters correct at this stage. In the limited time available, I will just set out our 4 chief concerns. Acoustic fence. There is no noise assessment as part of the application outlining how these impacts will be mitigated. There should be a requirement for an acoustic fence to be erected along the boundaries and the footpaths, and for this to be installed prior to any construction works taking place. Landscaping. There is significant reference to the requirement for 15-metre planting buffer throughout the supporting documents. We accept this as detail of reserve matter, but to ensure that the stud is protected, we considered that no development should take place until mature landscaping is planted along the northern boundary to create the buffer immediately, not years after the development has been completed. We strongly request the inclusion of a management plan which puts onus on the developer to mitigate against harmful impacts. This could include, for example, a requirement for the developer to have an estate regulation that bans fireworks and lanterns.
Thank you very much. Time's up, I'm afraid. Do members have any questions or points of clarification for the speakers? No? Okay, in that case, we'll move on to our member advocates. And I don't know who wants to go first. Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Chairman. MPPF planning reasons to refuse this application. The largest local employer, Newsall's Park Stud, say there will be 35 job losses, also affecting their families, suppliers, contractors, and the stud homes they live in. You cannot locate a large housing estate population next to the essential grazing for sensitive horses and their foals. The officer agrees and only suggests mitigation. It's not the same as a solution. The officer says, I have sympathy for this concern, and users are entitled to erect signage on their own land stating, do not feed or pet the horses. Hardly a solution. Job losses and eviction is not MPPF policy and will harm the rural economy. The developer talks of creating a north-south green corridor. Not true. The developer knows full well this is an existing green corridor, and a new road cutting across it will destroy it. MPPF, environmental harm, loss of biodiversity, and harm to the natural environment. Thames Water confirmed last year in Barkway there were 734 hours of raw sewage discharged into the Chalk River Quin. BK3 will at least double this pollution. I've been in touch with the Environment Agency, and I quote, when local planning authorities produce their local plans, we encourage them to speak to water companies to ensure there is sufficient sewage capacity for the predicted growth in the area and should have an up-to-date water cycle strategy. North Herts did not do this. The Environment Agency go on to say, following initial investigations, Thames Water have identified an inability of the existing sewage treatment works infrastructure to accommodate the needs of this development. No further housing until the sewage treatment plant is upgraded. This breaches MPPF environmental health, duty of care, harm to the environment, and health and well-being of the population. We need to send a message to government that this sort of harmful, unsustainable development is not acceptable and refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we move on to Councillor Tony Hunter.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be brief and give the committee some, if you like, factual things within the MPPF that they can actually focus on. I firmly believe this site's unsustainable. If you look at MPPF 6, Section 85, supporting a prosperous rural economy, this isn't. If you look at MPPF 4, promoting sustainable transport, this isn't. Section 105, by the way. MPPF 8, promoting healthy communities, 92C, 93A, 95. MPPF 11, conserving and enhancing the natural environment. This isn't. We have a situation here, it's an unsustainable site for development due to the lack of amenities, including education, health, transport, minimal public transport, therefore increasing the carbon footprint. The committee is in a situation that it can look at sustainability and the ecology report, because there's no mitigation measures within this report that I can see at all. And falling back on the fact that the government haven't decided or done it yet isn't an excuse for this council to ignore it. In the actual inspector's report, it states, education, inspector states development outside settlement area and a new school is not built. Parents will have, in some cases, travel to Barley, Royston or elsewhere. He also agrees this is not an ideal as it does reduce the sustainability credentials of the site.
Just one more minute.
The situation is, as I've said previously, what will happen here is the houses will be built and many families will be transporting children and also getting their supplies from Royston, Buntingford. It is not a sustainable site, Chairman, and I urge the committee to actually refuse. Let an inspector grant it. At least you can rest on your laurels that you didn't. Thank you kindly. Now I have to leave.
Are there any questions? I think, Councillor Hunter, you can wait just to answer any points of clarification, if there are any forthcoming, or for Councillor Morris as well. Councillor Allen as well.
Question for Councillor Hunter. You state that we let a planning inspector approve this. How much will this cost the council if we do this?
How much will it cost you not to? In the sense that you have an opportunity here to support the residents and the actual community. Now, if you put money before that, that's your choice.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? No? In that case, we'll move on to our speakers in support of the application. And we've got David Fletcher and Rob Brand sharing 5 minutes. The clock starts when you start.
Good evening. My name is Robert Rand and I am the applicant. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening and for Anne MacDonald's presentation in setting out the key planning issues and planning balances in reaching her recommendation for approval. Firstly, I would like to address what I believe are objections to this application that have clearly been fully addressed. The impact on the River Quin. As with all new development, wherever it may be in the newly adopted local plan, infrastructure and services will need to be instated or improved in order to facilitate it. BK3 is no different. There is a statutory responsibility, a legal requirement for Thames Water to upgrade the water treatment facilities in order to accommodate this development within 2 years. Currently, there is no obligation and no plan to upgrade. And the reality is that with increased housing from BK1 and BK2, sewage discharges into the River Quin are only going to get worse and more frequent. This is, of course, until a planning consent for BK3 triggers the legal requirement to upgrade the sewage works. Newsells Park Stud. The potential impact of this development on Newsells Park Stud is minimal. The inspector considered this in depth, and on his multiple visits to BK3, he also walked the footpaths and bridleways concerned. He suggested landscaping measures to mitigate any harm in the main modifications. These measures have been fully implemented in the proposed master plan. It has been previously suggested by the management of Newsells Park Stud that BK3 would make the stud unviable. This can simply be answered by the fact that Graham Smith Burnell Racing purchased Newsells in 2021 after a thorough process of due diligence. This was 3 years after this planning application was submitted, and it had been subjected to 2 separate impact assessments from Newsells' own consultants. I would like to highlight the positives. The green belt. Other than RY10, BK3 is the largest undeveloped site in the adopted local plan that is not in the green belt. Statutory consultees. This application has no objections from any of the statutory consultees, not one. Affordable housing. When I grew up in Barkway, there was a significant proportion of social housing in the village. People who worked on our farm and other local businesses could afford to live there, and they did. This is no longer the case. Individual or small developments have been below the threshold of providing affordable housing, and almost all of the social housing along Royston Road has been sold into private ownership. It is virtually impossible for young people who have grown up in the village, whose families have lived and worked there, to get on the housing ladder. This application will provide for up to 56 affordable units, which are so desperately needed. 65% of them rented and 35% being intermediate affordable units. This will help to return the housing balance within the village to how it traditionally used to be.
1 more minute.
It could be argued that BK3 was the most scrutinised site in the local plan, having its own hearing session at the examination in public, with the inspector visiting on multiple occasions. He concluded that this site was sound, and I hope that councillors, you do as well. David Fletcher from Strutton Parker is on hand to answer any planning related questions, and Andrew Wren is a drainage consultant from Ardent, and he is on hand to answer any foul drainage questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure I recognise the name of the second person that you mentioned there. Is this a registered speaker?
I don't believe he is a registered speaker.
Perhaps he could relay his comments to someone who is in that case. Yeah. Members, do you have any points of clarification for Mr. Rand or his associates? Yes, Councillor Levitt.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Rand, you would say, excuse me, I haven't turned around, we're laid out. You said you acknowledge the problem that there is with the sewage treatment works and the capacity there. Have you actually been in touch with Angling Water about this and had any negotiations about the site and the times it would take to put the measures into place?
This is a question I can't answer. This is for a planning consultant. Andrew Wren can answer you that question, or David Fletcher. He's a registered speaker. He can take that question.
Thank you. So just to give a bit more clarity on that. So we've had a number of discussions with Thames Water over a number of years, which dates back from Initially, when the site had a draft allocation in the emerging local plan, we discussed the application prior to the submission of the application, and we've had further discussions with them since the application has been submitted. Most recently, prior to the committee in September of this year. What we have agreed with them is an outlined fail strategy and connection point into the Thames Water network. We have agreed a design and build timescale for the upgrades of the wastewater treatment works, which Thames Water have set out and agreed 8 months of modelling, 6 months for design, 6 months of construction, which is a total period of 20 months from start to finish. From engagement we had with them in June this year, they provided the following written response to us to confirm that there is some capacity and that they have been aware from our engagement with them of this development coming forward for some time. And they've said that we can't formally put in a date for the upgrades until we have certainty that planning permission has been granted. So following tonight, in the event that planning permission is granted, the next step from our perspective will be further engagement with Thames Water to agree a timescale for the commencement of the modelling, design and construction works I've outlined above to commence.
Certainly.
The official response from Thames Water by email on the 11th of July this year is they say Thames Water would advise that with regard to foul water sewage network infrastructure capacity, we would not have any objections to the above planning application based on the information provided. So that's their official response back to me on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions from members? Okay, in that case, can I invite Anne to respond to any points that have been raised?
Thank you, Chair. I think I just have to start off by saying this is an allocated site in the local plan. That means it's been found to be sustainable by the inspector. The local plan has been adopted by this council. I'd just like to reiterate that point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, in that case, we move on to the debate. Councillor Weeder, can I just remind you that you arrived late, so you won't be able to take part in this debate or the vote on it. Yes, who would like to start? Councillor Levitt.
Thank you, Chair. As has already been mentioned several times, this is a site within the local plan. It has had quite a thorough inspection from the inspector at the time. There's been a lot of work done on it. However, I do have some slight concerns still around the sewage one, and it's more about the wording of condition 9 than anything else, which deals with the sewage. Let me just get to it. Page 47. This is an outline application, all matters reserved, so there's plenty of time. There's quite a while yet before anything else happens with it. The detailed application's got to come forward, and we've just heard that it's about 20 months to get this sewage thing into effect. So condition 9, I'd move a recommendation that we change the wording slightly and replace no development shall be occupied until confirmation is provided to no development shall commence until.
Thank you, Councillor Levitt. And is that feasible?
I don't see. I mean, the wording came from Thames Water. It's how they wanted it. As long as it doesn't change the emphasis of the condition overall, then that tweak should be okay.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
I was going to second Councillor Levitt, but I don't think he actually proposed it.
So that was a proposal to approve the offers of recommendation. Okay.
I will second the recommendation with the amendment.
Is there anyone else who'd like to contribute to the debate? giving you some thinking time. It is a complicated, somewhat contentious case, this. Okay, well, if there's nobody who's got a contribution to make, we can move to the vote. So the proposal is to accept the recommendation to approve with the amendment to condition 9. Yes. Can we go to the vote then, please, James? Amy.
Chair, that motion's carried as amended.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming and for your many contributions in various ways over the recent weeks. And we'll take a 5-minute break now in order to allow members of the public to leave if they wish to do so. And we'll get ready for the next one. Oh, just turn it on, it should come to me. It's not moving. It was to start with. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. We move on now to agenda item number 7, which is application 22/00927/FP 20 High Street, Baldock. Anne McDonald to present.
Thank you, Chair. As everyone is aware, there's 2 items at this site. So even though the application has been taken separately, my presentation is going to be covering both items because obviously the issues cut across both applications. So I've received a number of late letters and 2 updates which apply to both applications, and I'm going to summarise them all now. These have all been circulated to committee, and given they are lengthy, I'm not going to be reading any of them out. I've received a group of objections from Hartsfield JMI School, Western Way Nursery School and Knights Templars School, all raising safeguarding concerns that they consider these applications pose to children walking to and from school. I've received an objection from Pixar's Cafe, which is a neighbour next door but one. They object on the basis of safeguarding concerns, crime, disorder and antisocial behaviour, and the concern that this change of use will affect their own business, and they also object based on harm to listed building. I've also received an objection from a consultancy, GovResource, submitted on behalf of a group of residents on the High Street. This raises the same concerns as Pixar's Cafe, but also in addition objects to the loss of commercial floor space in the town centre, objects to the loss of the ground floor of the building as communal living accommodation for the existing 19 residents, and states that the local plan does not make provision of accommodation for homeless people. In support of the application is a statement from the YMCA which sets out progress on the build of the new facility off Pixmore Way and sets out that support is given to residents and that antisocial behaviour from residents is not tolerated. I've also received a more detailed response from the police liaison officer. He concludes that whilst crime figures have increased in the town, excuse me, over the time period from October 2019 to September 2022, only one incident is listed in the crime stats at being at number 20, which is neither crime or antisocial behaviour listed, so he has ignored it in his response. He states that whilst reports of antisocial behaviour in the town have increased, total crime in the town has increased and that not all of this can be linked to the use at number 20. He gives an example of Stevenage where there is a similar haven shelter, and whilst reports of antisocial behaviour have increased in Stevenage, this is due to groups of youths congregating in the local park and not due to the service users of the shelter, and he indicates a similar situation could be happening in Baldock. Dealing with the issues raised by the late letters, most issues are considered in the committee report. 3 issues are not, and I will deal with these briefly now. One is the concern about local safeguarding. Regarding this matter is not an issue which the police liaison officer has commented on or raised as a concern to the proposal. On this basis, I have no objection to the application on the basis of safeguarding concerns. The second issue is regard to the loss of commercial floor space from the town. I acknowledge that the committee report does not refer to policy SP4, which sets out the projection of retail floor space in the town over the plan period. However, whilst the extant flat scheme does have the provision of retail floor space at ground floor level, these applications are proposed as a temporary, not a permanent use, and future applications for the building that then potentially would be a permanent use can take this policy into account at that point in time. I therefore consider that this is a non-issue for these applications for us tonight. The third claim is that I disagree with the claim that the local plan does not make provision for homeless people. Policy SPHG specifically refers to providing supported accommodation to meet the needs of those who cannot live in their own home. Whilst a reference to the homeless is not specifically stated, given this is a proposal for supported accommodation for those who do not have their own home, this proposal is in accordance with the aims of this policy criteria, in my view. Can we go to the slides, please? No, lovely, thank you. This slide shows that number 20 is positioned on the west side of the road. The purple buildings are all listed buildings and the horizontal lines indicate that this area is within the conservation area. Number 20 fronts onto the high street with a wide pavement and grass area in front and has a passageway on the south side, which provides for an outdoor amenity area. This application 20/00927 is for the change of use of the ground floor to 10 further rooms, whilst the next item on the agenda is the retention and continuation in the use of the first and second floor for 19 rooms. Together, this is a provision of 29 rooms, and whilst being 2 planning applications, this is in effect 1 proposal to be operated by 1 provider. Next slide, please. This shows the layout of the building as existing. It's not terribly clear. Next slide, please. This shows the external elevations. The red windows are windows to be secondary glazed. The green windows are new double glazed windows. The navy windows are replacement double glazed windows, and the sky blue windows are existing unaltered windows. This is the same external window detailing as approved in the extant scheme to change the use of the building into 1 retail shop and 14 self-contained flats. The listed building application is not before you tonight as it's not been called into Planning Control Committee, and the Conservation Officer actually raises no objection to the proposed changes to the listed building. Next slide, please. This shows the proposed ground floor conversion with the extent flat scheme at first and second floor levels. And this is the plan that members of the public, you would have viewed on the website. I received an amended plan yesterday, which is on the website, but people might not have spotted it. So it's the next slide for information, please. This shows the proposed building layout which is the same at ground floor level as the plan before, with retention of rooms at the first and second floor level, which is the subject of the next application. As can be seen, there is a lounge and kitchen for use by residents on the ground floor and a kitchen dining room in the basement. Therefore, this layout offers plenty of communal space internally for residents within the proposed conversion of the ground floor to 10 rooms. And in my view, this proposal does not represent the overdevelopment or the overconcentration of the use in this building. The proposed use of the ground floor for supported accommodation is an acceptable land use in the town centre location, and recommendations to design out crime with the use of CCTV and locked ground floor doors are included within the conditions. The report acknowledges that there are objections to this use and the retention of the first and second floors primarily due to concerns around the fear of crime and antisocial behaviour. However, as set out in the committee reports, planning controls land use, not the users of the land use. And the behaviour of the users of the land use is down to the management of the service provider and the local police in the event of unacceptable behaviour. The council has a duty of care to these members of our society, and this is a proposed temporary use for 3 years whilst the permanent facility is built. In my view, there are no material planning reasons to refuse this application. I have a few slides of the outside of the building, so next slide, please. This is the front. Next slide, please. This is the side next to the car showroom building. Next slide, please. This is the other side leading down to the courtyard area. Next slide, please. That's obviously just the side passageway next to the car sales. The application is therefore recommended for conditional permission for a temporary period of 3 years. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do members have any questions for our officer? No, well, in that case, we'll move on to our registered speakers, and we have Karen Bugler.
Okay, thank you. So we believe the report from the officer is fundamentally flawed. You will have read our detailed objections submitted in response to the officer's report, which is also summarised in the document I emailed yesterday. I'll take this opportunity to highlight the key omissions in the report. Firstly, police statistics. It is clear that only offences reported within the building itself have been referenced, when the issue is clearly the widespread crime and antisocial behaviour across the town. As soon as the report was received, we submitted an FOI request to get an accurate report, and we're still awaiting a response. However, in the interim, we've compiled a list of reported incidents with police crime reference numbers. Over a 3-month period during this summer, 24 reported incidents involving residents of 20 High Street occurred, including violence and GBH, overdoses in the street, open drug use and dealing, aggressive begging, intimidation, theft, public urination and intercourse. And yes, we do have recorded evidence, and yes, we are sure that the incidents all involved residents of 20 High Street. Baldock has no police station. We are served by a station that's 9 minutes away. Last month, a stabbing took place in Stevenage. It was confirmed by the police as being committed by a resident of 20 High Street. Ultimately, looking at incidents only within the walls of 20 High Street itself, and only for the month of June, surely cannot be an acceptably diligent method of reporting. If waiting for the police report was grounds to defer this meeting, waiting for an accurate police report should be grounds to defer the decision. Secondly, location and safeguarding. In the planning officer's report, the police architectural liaison officer makes a very clear acknowledgement that a high number of the residents of 20 High Street are and will be drug users, and they are anticipating drug dealers frequenting the area. They recommend design modifications to protect the residents, but give no consideration to the vulnerable members of Baldock's community and the grave safeguarding risk this presents to them. Not mentioned in the report, and a critical omission, is the proximity to local schools. The building is situated directly on a key intersection where a large portion of Baldock's children pass each day to access their schools. I draw your attention to the 2 maps I shared with you yesterday, which are also in our objection. They show the 11 education and childcare settings surrounding the facility and the key alleyways that the children walk through on their way to school, which are known hotspots for criminal activity, particularly drug dealing. Just 67 metres away from 20 High Street is Pepper Alley, a key access to Knights Templar School, with many reports of drug dealing. Knights Templar requests that children are dropped on the high street and proceed down this alleyway towards school. Just 108 metres away from 20 High Street is a key alleyway to Hartsfield School, with clear evidence of drug use and alcohol lining the path. A pedestrian survey conducted over 2 mornings in November counted almost 500 children using the alleyways each morning and demonstrates the number of children exposed on a daily basis. You will be aware that the head teachers of a number of local schools have made representation to the planning officer since the publication of the report, highlighting their concerns about the location and the safeguarding risk that presents. Copies of those letters have been sent to you, and I'm going to share an extract. So in the head teacher's words, quote, "Members of our community, including the governor, frequently witness very young girls being bought alcohol in the corner shop by male residents of the former Templars building. They've witnessed them then leaving together, and we are very concerned that this is evidence of grooming. We recommend that consideration is given to Baldock school children and the grave safeguarding risk this presents to them," unquote. In light of this critical omission from the report, and with head teachers' reports of safeguarding concerns, you cannot in good conscience approve this application. And thirdly, infrastructure. I refer again to the document already shared, which includes a graph showing beds provided for vulnerable people per 1,000 residents.
1 more minute.
Should the extension be granted, Baldock will have 6 times more beds than Stevenage, a much larger town far better equipped to support and rehabilitate vulnerable people. The argument that it is a sustainable location with employment opportunities is a false one. There are very few employment opportunities within the town now, and it's an expensive location to commute from with unreliable public transport. Taking into account the key omissions from the officer's report, the unsuitability and unsustainability of such a large facility in a small town like Baldock, the lack of an accurate police report, and the safeguarding concerns raised by local schools and the wider community, you must agree that you do not have sufficient information, and therefore you should not approve this application tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do members have any points of clarification? Councillor Allen.
Just a question on the proof of your recorded evidence for the statements that you've made that the police haven't put through, but you have, saying that these incidents have happened. Will you be able to forward those on to members, please?
Absolutely, we can. We have reference numbers and we also have photographic evidence.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? We'll move on to our member advocates then. I think we'll start with Councillor Weeks, yes, because you called it in and you've got 5 minutes speaking time from when you begin.
Thank you, Chairman. First, members will have listened carefully to Karen's presentation and I hope consider the 15-page objections submitted by her yesterday or the day before on behalf of the people of Baldock. For the sake of democracy, this document should be accepted into consideration. In the document, inter alia, it challenges both the officer's findings on matters case law precedents and brings into play parts of our new local plan. In essence, it shows that the officer's findings are flawed. If members have not perused the objection in depth, which is quite likely given the short time available, it may be difficult for them to come to an objective decision here this evening. The officer needs to give a concise and full reply to the matters raised in the objection. If not, she should concede and change her recommendation. So, members, down to the nitty-gritty. You would have seen my summary placed before you on your desks this evening and have read the officer's summary at 3.6 of the report. From this, you can find no other conclusion that such behaviour is totally unacceptable. Be aware that these instances are not history, but are happening now. Take, for instance, a young lady last week who was asked to be accompanied to the cash machine. The incidents are occurring with some 19 residents in Templars, and yet the officer is intent on increasing this number by 10 persons, which means an increase of 40%. This is 40% more begging, 40% more intimidation, 40% more drugs. This is totally unacceptable. As for the police, clearly they have not the time or resources to deal with providing records. So as much as we regret doing so, FOI requests have been made, but we have not as yet received a response. When putting it abroad in Baldock that the police could only trace one incident, we received comments to saying that, inverted commas, "You must be joking. I rarely go into town, but when I do, every time I see blue lights." There are always issues at Baldock. The police are running a taxi service for the residents of Templars and so on. It should also be remembered that a vast majority of the incidents go unreported. Schools, as Karen mentioned in her report, there are objections from 3 schools. And one of the schools, the chairman of this committee was a teacher at quite recently. So some of her ex-pupils are likely those at risk here. I say to you members, would you like your children or grandchildren to pass this building every day? I think not. Lacking in the officer's report is any reference whatsoever to the safety of women and girls. This subject is high on the national agenda at the moment, and yet there is no consideration or no mention of this in the officer's report. In concluding, Mr. Chairman, Baldock is a historic, pretty market town, and where residents are proud of its heritage, atmosphere, and its fun social events. All this is blighted at the risk by the presence of the Templars hostel. Why should people have to suffer intimidation, aggressive begging, and the rest of it every day? Why should the elderly and vulnerable have to cross the road to avoid the elderly? Members, you have the power, and I speak for all here this evening when I ask you to put a stop to it now. I will say this before anyone else does. Do not be afraid of an appeal. It will be an exchange of statements, and we will assist as best we can. Absolutely finally, Mr. Chairman, I will remind members that the council plan, which is plastered all over its website and elsewhere, says to put people first.
Thank you very much.
Members, I ask you to put the good people of Baldock and council towns of Baldock first, and not those who are.
Thank you very much, Councillor Weeks. That's your time. And we'll go on to hear from Councillor Muir. Sorry.
Want to share the minute?
Oh, I beg your pardon. That was a shared. I'm sorry. Councillor Weeks used up the 5 minutes, I'm afraid. So thank you, but you have no time to say that in, I'm afraid, Councillor Muir. Okay. So are there any points of clarification from members? Councillor Allen.
Councillor Weeks, I'd like to remind you we're in a planning meeting, not on a soapbox. What you have said has got very little to do with planning, and has got very little to do with the information that we need.
Councillor Allen, can you come to your point of clarification, please?
My point of clarification for Councillor Weeks, no, because he didn't say anything consequence.
Thank you. Do other members have any points of clarification that they'd like to raise with Councillor Weeks or Councillor Muir? No, well, in that case, we'll move on to hear from the supporter of the application, which is Ewan Courtney Morgan.
Good evening. I'm Ewan Courtney Morgan, representing 1YMCA and Haven First. Firstly, thank you for taking the time to consider our application to grant retention and temporary use, change of use, which enables us to provide accommodation for some of the most vulnerable members of the local community at 20 High Street, Baldock. It's to be noted that people whom we support are from all walks of life and are genuinely homeless and in need of help. This summary seeks to support both applications. There have been a number of key questions posed by those considering the application I'd like to provide further clarity on. One of which was, how is the building managed? We have a dedicated team of staff provided by the charity on a 24/7 basis. Another was, what facilities for residents are provided? We provide full support and counselling. How long do residents spend in the building? Temporary accommodation is provided and any individual can spend up to 18 months at the shelter. When will you relocate the residents? We have a preferred site at Procedural Way, which is to provide 40 alternative bed spaces, which has planning approval, and is now subject to negotiation and contract. The final question was the potential impact of antisocial behaviour. We're not aware of any major issues with our presence on the high street, and the police continue to be very supportive of this of the service. The number of antisocial behaviour incidents confirmed to involved Haven clients to date are negligible. Thank you. On the behalf of
I beg your pardon, just interrupt. Could we have quiet from members of the public while the speaker's delivering his representation? Thank you very much.
Lastly, just to say thank you both on behalf of 1YMCA and Haven First, and we very much hope that decision is taken to support this life-saving service for those in need.
Thank you. Do members have any points of clarification for the speaker? Councillor Levitt.
Thank you, Chair. You raised the point about monitoring, and you said you have a dedicated team available 24/7. Is that on site or remote? Sorry.
Yes, this is on site.
Councillor Allen.
Can I ask how the residents have attempted to engage with the local community, if they've been looking to get more involved in the local community at all, or anything they've done to try and engage with the people of Baldock?
That's something I don't have the answer to, I'm afraid, this evening.
Thank you. Councillor Hunter.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, my question was quite simple. You say you have a dedicated team. How many of that team are on site at any given time?
Again, I don't have that answer to that question this evening, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Are there any other points for clarification? No, in that case, we'll ask our officer to respond to any points that have been raised so far.
Thank you, Chair. I'd only like to reiterate that it's not the planning service to tackle antisocial behaviour. That's responsibility of other groups. It's responsibility of the police. It's responsibility of the management of the building, and it's not the planning system's responsibility to tackle antisocial behaviour. I'd also like to say that the objection that came in yesterday at 15 pages, obviously it's not possible for me to go through every point in my presentation. As I already said in my presentation, the vast majority of the comments are already covered in the report. I picked out the key issues that I felt needed to be addressed, the safeguarding and the loss of commercial floor space. And even though I've read obviously all the comments, I've taken them all on board, but I don't feel it fundamentally changes my view or my recommendation on this application. And I see no need to defer this application for those points to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, in that case, we can. Do you want to do the debate on this, or then move on or do the other application? Second application now. The debate. Okay, we'll move on to the debate on this application, and Councillor Levitt has.
Thank you, Chair. This is normally something I would support quite easily. I believe we do need to look after the homeless. We do need suitable accommodation. It's a well-designed thing, well laid out. Each suite, one's en suite. We've heard they've got on-site supervision. However, I do have a lot of concerns with this that doesn't let me make a decision on this one at the moment. The main one being, and I'm going to quote from the NPPF because most people won't have that in front of them. Section 8 of the NPPF, paragraph 91B, says planning and policy decisions should aim to achieve healthy, inclusive and safe places which, and section D says, are safe and accessible so that crime and disorder and the fear of crime do not undermine the quality of life or community cohesion. Going on to section 95A, planning policies and decisions should promote public safety and take into account wider security and defence requirements by A, anticipating and addressing possible malicious threats and natural hazards, especially in locations where a large number of peoples are expected to congregate. Policies for relevant areas such as town centre and regeneration schemes and allowed design developments should be informed by the most up-to-date information available from the police and other agencies about the nature and potential of threats and their implications. This includes appropriate and proportionate steps that can be taken to reduce vulnerability, increase resilience, and ensure public safety and security. Both from the officers' report and from what I've heard tonight from the speakers on both sides, I don't think those are met. Those tests are met, or I don't see the evidence to say that those tests are met. We've heard that there's a load of further incidents being reported with incident numbers, which we don't have and which haven't been taken into consideration on this. So we've heard about extra submissions, which we haven't had a chance to look at. So that makes it quite difficult. And the actual applicant, when asked, is that 24/7 support on site, answered yes to me, but to Councillor Hunter answered don't know how many and don't know when. So I'm a little bit, I don't think it's enough to refuse it on, but there's certainly not enough here to take this one forward and approve it. So I'm going to actually ask that we defer this one until we get some more reports on those specific matters I've raised, particularly in reference, referring them to the NPPF, and satisfy me on those. So I move to defer, Chair.
You're proposing a motion to defer on the grounds that the information that we've been given is insufficient to make a decision. Okay. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Derbyshire.
Happy to second, Chair, and I reserve my right to speak.
Okay. Well, shall we continue with the debate, and or do we want to take a vote straight away on that? We have to take the vote now. Okay. Yes, we've got certainly, Anne. I think we need to hear from you.
I just want to make members aware that I have contacted the police many times. So I'm not entirely sure what you think I can get out of them that isn't already before you tonight, members. I spoke to the police liaison officer 10 days ago, maybe maximum 2 weeks ago, probably more like 10 days ago. And I specifically asked him, are these figures up to date? And he said they're the ones that he could use. I'm not disputing that there's these other crime numbers out there, but I'm not entirely sure what it is you think. If you deferred it, what information it is you actually specifically want.
Councillor Levitt, would you like to come back on that?
Yes, certainly. Well, we've heard about these incidents that have been reported recently. So they may not have been taken into consideration. They do appear to refer to this particular site, and they do appear in conflict with the NPPF quoted. So that's why I'm asking to be deferred, so we can look at those a little bit more closely.
So Councillor Levitt is saying that it's just the difficulty is that these incidents appear to refer to or relate to the application. We can't be certain whether that's the case or not.
I would just like to add my view on the paragraph that Councillor Levitt referred to. So Councillor Levitt has referred to paragraph 95A in the NPPF, and it says policies for relevant areas and the layout and design of developments should be informed. We're not looking at a layout and design of development. We're looking at the change of use of a building that exists in a town that exists. So there are conditions recommended on the proposed change of use application to design out crime, with the condition for CCTV and the locks on the windows. And that is how the planning system addresses designing out crime. It looks at physical works that can be done to prevent antisocial behaviour. And when you're looking at layout developments of large scale things, often police don't like cut throughs in towns. They often don't like the shortcuts because they are the areas where antisocial behaviour can congregate and people can congregate. But we're not looking at the layout of the town. We're looking at the change of use of a building. And the application doesn't have the ability to address secured by design issues outside of the red line application site. So I just like to draw that to members' attention. Thank you.
Councillor Allen.
I'm very worried that we are looking too much on the antisocial behaviour and the crime aspect, which is definitely an issue, and not looking at the planning law, which is why we're here. We're not here because our officer tells us to be. The officer represents what gets told across. It's not their thing that they want to do it. We need to be following planning law. And at the moment, I don't think Councillor Levitt's reasoning would stand up as far as planning goes. So unless he's able to give a stronger reason, I wouldn't be able to vote to agree with him.
Thank you. Councillor Levitt.
Yes, coming back to 95A, the officer just referred to the bit about saying it's about design. That's not what it says. It says planning policies and decisions should promote public safety and take into account security and defence by anticipating and addressing possible malicious threats and natural hazards, especially in large numbers, and the layout of design and developments. The layout is only part of it.
Well, you've proposed a motion to defer. It's been seconded, and we've had some discussion on that. The officer's advice is reasonably clear, I think, although I think you're disputing that that's the case. But we have to take a vote on this now. We've got Councillor Hunter.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm exceptionally uncomfortable with this for the simple reason, and I do agree with Councillor Levitt. And in fact, I've been reading Section 8 of the NPPF, and there's many parts of it that I think actually are under planning law, that we have a duty to actually make sure people are safe and against crime and disorder. But the thing is, I get the feeling the officer is telling us that she cannot get an answer out of the police that is the case. But I heard earlier in a presentation that there's solid evidence. There's a freedom of information request gone into the police. So I'm more than happy to defer this item until we get some solid evidence back that these things aren't anecdotal and the people behind us aren't just finding a reason for not looking after these homeless people, because I'm sure within those numbers there are people that definitely do need help, and that's of great concern to us that we make sure that it's balanced. So I'm quite happy to support a deferment until we get some more solid evidence. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Leonetta, did you?
Just again to reiterate what the officer said, they have spoken to the police, they have tried to seek information, they've not been able to get that information. If members are minded to defer, which has been proposed, it needs to be, you need to give more reasons as to. Is that better? Okay, sorry about that. As I said, the officer's already said she has been in contact with the police. They've not given her the information that clearly people are saying has not been found. The issue we have now is that the officer has asked, and the answer she's got is obviously not the answer that people are expecting, but that's the answer that she's been given. She can only give the report based on the information she's received. In relation to the FOI, I don't know, you'd have to know what the questions are in the FOI in the first instance. We haven't been privy to that FOI question, and we don't know what they are. We don't know what the response is going to be. If you are deferring on that basis, you're deferring on the basis of the outcome of the FOI, which we haven't asked for, someone else has asked for. How are we going to get that information for you to then decide? You just, if that's what you're waiting for, it's not something that we've asked for as a council. It's something that an external party has asked for.
Councillor Bloxham, I've got you next, or would you like to allow Councillor Levitt to respond to that point first?
Chair, my very point is that we've asked for the information and we haven't got it. We need it to make a fair decision. We need to ask again. We've had more information come tonight about specific, and I'm sure the people there will be able to give you the incident numbers. We can go back with specifics of those, which we haven't had before, just ask for a general report on it. I don't think we've gone back on any specifics. We don't have, we've asked the questions, we don't have the answers. How can we make a decision when we don't have the answers? That's why I'm asking to defer, not refuse or accept.
I hear what you're saying about defer, but the officer said that they have asked the questions and they've had an answer, and they have had an answer from the police, and the answer is what she's put in her report. That's all I'm saying. So you're saying you haven't had the answer, but the question has been asked and answered. It's not the answer you're expecting, but it's the answer that's been given to the officer.
So, Councillor Levitt, the crime stats were emailed round by James Levitt as one of the updates, and they are in front of you. They came round. So the crime stats that we've been given by the police, I'm just opening up the email now. Date from, sorry, it's very slow. It's this next spreadsheet opening up. They go through, I think, to October this year. They're quite recent, so they go through to just look at the document I'm opening up. Hold on. Yeah, so the crime stats before you tonight go from October 2019 through to September 2022. And they're the ones that I emailed around in the update. So I have got, I have been provided with the latest crime stats from the police. Thank you.
Councillor Tyler seems to have leapfrogged you on my list here. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chair. If I understood correctly, that one of the speakers gave us the details about incidents that are linked to number 20. I think Councillor Allen said, can we have a copy of that? And I think this is the information that we really need to see whether it's actually stands up. We can't have that tonight. They need to forward it to us, and then we could make a decision. So I support the deferment.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Bloxham.
Thank you. Yeah, I can understand exactly what Councillor Levitt is trying to do. I can also understand exactly what the officer is saying. I think this is quite clear. We are not going to get any more detail that we can possibly put forward. I know that we've got anecdotal evidence and there is something to back it up. And I believe that. I've got no reason to not believe that at all. But I don't think we're going to get what we're asking for in the deferment. So I can't really support that. I think we should be taking this to the vote to accept or refuse.
Thank you. Any? No. Do members have any? Yes, Neonetta.
Sorry, I think it would be quite helpful, Councillor Levitt, as you've asked for a deferment, to give a time frame and what you're expecting from this deferment. So it's helpful to the applicant, it's also helpful to the officer as to what you're requiring if you are asking for deferment. Just to ask for deferment isn't particularly helpful in moving this application forward. So we need a bit more information on that, please.
We've heard tonight from the speakers that they have further information and further evidence. So I'd like us to be able to see that first, have that answered by the police, and then it come back to us. If there's specific crime numbers and that, and we've been told they do refer to residents there, which I've read the email we had with the other stuff in it, which does go up to October. But we seem to have a conflict there between what the police are saying and what the incidents are saying and what the evidence is. Now, I can't pick that either way. That's why I'm asking for a deferment. I would say, how long is it going to take? It's December now, isn't it? Probably can't come back to the February committee. Give us time to do it over the holidays.
Councillor Allen.
What kind of evidence does Councillor Levitt have to pick out February? Is that just picking a number out of a hat? Because with all due respect, we've got the information from the police that we're going to get. This has been repeated and repeated.
Yes.
I think we're getting lost in a bit of a non-planning issue here. Planning is about land use. Crime stats are a police matter. Planning, in my view, based on planning law, isn't responsible for the crime stats. And that's my view. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne. And for the record, I have to say that I agree that we're talking about whether or not incidents of crime have taken place that were allegedly perpetrated by residents of a building, but whether those incidents took place and wherever, I'm not convinced that that is what we're here to debate. And we're talking about the use of the building and whether the building is designing out crime to the, excuse me. Thank you. I am very sympathetic to people's unpleasant experiences that they may have had, but this is not the place to shout out, and I ask you to respect the decorum of the meeting and not attempt to pressurize members into their decision making, because I'm not sure that that would be to anyone's advantage at all. So to come back to the point, this is a planning committee and we're talking about the building and whether that is conducive to and the management of the building is conducive to the good behaviour of the residents within it. And it's very difficult to say to the police, we don't think that you've given us the right information, because they, as our case officer has said, they have been asked on numerous occasions to be more specific about what those crime figures actually mean. And obviously there is a conflict between what we're hearing from the police and what we're hearing from the residents. But that element is something that I'm not quite sure that I feel comfortable trying to make a decision upon as a member of a planning committee. That's my view. Does anyone else have a contribution to this debate? Yeah. Okay, now we do have to vote on Councillor Levitt's motion to defer, as it was seconded by Councillor Derbyshire. So if we do that next, we'll see where we end up.
Chair, that motion is lost. 6 votes to 4 for the record at home.
Thank you. In which case, we now proceed with the debate on the substantive issue of the recommendation to approve the application. And we're talking about the 10 units in the upstairs floor of the building. So Councillor Bloxham would like to contribute first.
Thank you. I'll keep it short and sweet, really. I think we're here to represent the residents that we have in North Hertfordshire. And it might not be a requirement of planning to tackle antisocial behaviour, as we've heard from the officer, quite rightly so. But it's fundamental to what this council should be doing. We should be representing and looking out for our community, which includes vulnerable people that might be actually housed in this facility. But we do have to look after our community, and I think we should be looking at refusal on the grounds that we've heard and the testimony that we've heard from speakers today about the antisocial behaviour that happens there, and we should be protecting our residents. So I would urge this committee to actually refuse on those grounds, whether they're planning reasons or not. I mentioned in another debate to put on some big boy pants, and I won't use that one again. But I do think sometimes we do need to stand up for our residents, even if it is against planning conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, that being said, Councillor Bloxham, I can't condone your opinion that we are here to give judgments on anything other based on anything other than planning reasons, and you will have to provide planning reasons for your suggestion if that's to go ahead. Yeah. Who else would like to contribute? Councillor Allen.
I think soapboxing at the expense of the most vulnerable members of society in here has been disgusting. I really do. I also think that the amount of comments and things we're getting from the public gallery is enough to intimidate people to not be able to make their own votes. I think it's not good at all. I think that we follow the planning's recommendations. We do what is needed for our community. And yes, it is appalling, and we've got to make sure the police back everything up. And I do want to see those crime figures come through so that we can try and do our best to support them. But I feel that we have to support our planning officer's recommendation. We have to support the people in need. And I'll be voting for this amendment, and I would propose that we do approve this.
Thank you. Okay. So, Councillor Bloxham, can I just come back to you? Were you actually making a proposal to reject the recommendation?
I wasn't making it at the time.
Okay,
but if there's,
no, it's just a sequential thing, because I think Councillor Allen has just moved to approve it. Yeah. Okay. So can we have a seconder for approval? And that's Councillor Mason. Thank you. And do we have any further contributions to the debate? Councillor Levitt.
Yeah, I'm sorry to come to this, because I would love to approve this one. I've Councillor Allen's reasons for protect the vulnerable and everything like that. However, as I've said before, I don't think I have sufficient evidence to ensure that we're doing the right thing for the general community in general, as Councillor Bloxham has said. So I can't support it. I really, really reluctantly, I can't support it for those reasons.
Thank you, Councillor Levitt. Anyone else with a contribution to make? Yes, Councillor Mason.
These are incredibly hard decisions, and I would commend the I'm sorry, I don't know the member of public's name who spoke, but I thought it was a very measured contribution. I'm not sure that the supporting ones from members was necessarily as measured, but I thought it was measured, and you would have to be incredibly thoughtless to not sympathise with a lot of what's been said by members of the public from Baldock here. And however, somebody said earlier about putting people first, and I'm really conscious at the end that the people we're talking about here are also the people who will benefit from this place, who are some of the most vulnerable people, possibly the most vulnerable people in society. And I don't like language like some of the language I've heard used. And at the end of the day, I think what weighs most on my conscience is that we provide facility for the people involved. So I will vote to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Are there any further contributions? And I just would like to point out that it's not the purpose of the planning department to police antisocial behaviour. We've got to make an assumption that proper authorities are doing their job in that. So that's not a planning choice that we can make as a council. So if there are no further contributions to the debate, we will now go to the vote, which was moved by Councillor Allen, which is to approve the officer's recommendation.
Chair, that motion is tied, therefore you will have the deciding vote.
My vote is to approve.
To confirm, Chair, that motion is carried with the Chair's deciding vote.
Now, we're not entirely finished on this now because there is the second application. The case officer has already indicated that she's not going to reproduce or replicate her presentation from earlier. But it does remain for me to say that the public speakers who registered to speak on this are still welcome to make additional comments if they wish to do so, and that's on the proposal to retain the 19 rooms as existing at the moment. So I'll just ask, Karen, did you want to add anything in terms of this second application?
Application being the retention,
yes,
as opposed to the extension.
Yeah.
I think I've said everything.
No, okay, I understand. Yeah.
you.
And the same question goes to the member advocates, councillors Weeks and Muir, and also to Mr. Courtney Morgan. Okay. Do members have any points that they wish to? Councillor Muir.
Thank you. I do like to say something. I agree with everything that Councillor Wink said when he used up his 5 minutes, so it gives me a chance now to say a few things. You can see the strength of the feeling from the people behind, and as far as antisocial behaviour and punch-ups, I've seen two myself, two of the residents fighting, and police were called, and there was 2 squad cars there with 4 police officers. The other thing I saw was outside this lady's house, a resident hit a woman who was in her 40s. She had blood coming all down her face, black eye.
Thank you, Councillor Muir. We're hearing now a list of anecdotal evidence about antisocial or criminal behaviour, which obviously you've reported to the police.
Well, this is what I'm saying of things that I have personally seen of antisocial behaviour.
Yeah.
So I hope that the committee will when it comes back, take forward all these points from the residents who will give further information on the problems that this Templars cause. Thank you.
Thank you. And I take your point, Councillor Muir, and I'm also well aware that the representative is here and listening to the strength of feeling and what, aware of what an emotive issue this is and how upsetting it is for many people in Baldock. But as I said before, this is a planning committee and we have to decide on planning terms only how we make our choices about approving or otherwise. So as far as I can remember now, we're up to the point at which we could be having a debate on the second application, the retention of the 19 rooms. Karen, is it very brief because we have sort of moved on now?
A very small point
Yeah.
was about the incidents happening within the four walls of the Templars or 20 High Street, which is, I think, what's been referred to in the police statistics, not what we're referring to, which is in the general vicinity involving residents of the Templars or 20 High Street.
Thank you. Yeah. Theoretically, now we come to the debate on that second application. So are there any members who wish to make a comment at this point? Okay, so we need a proposer for the second application. We've got Councillor Allen.
For the same reasons before, happy to propose that we approve the officer's recommendation.
And do we have a seconder? Councillor Nolan. Thank you. So if we move to the vote on that application now.
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. And we will now take a short break of 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. And we move on to item number 9 on our agenda, which is 21/02796/FP, 59 to 61 Walsworth Road in Hitchin. And our case officer is Peter Bull. Over to you.
It's on now. Thanks. Thank you, Chair. So there's an update. There's 2 additional responses have been received from the Herts County Council Growth and Infrastructure Unit and the lead local flood authority. These have been circulated as addendums to the original report. Herts County Council are seeking financial contributions towards library, primary, secondary and special needs education services to the total amount of 46,485. The applicant has agreed in principle to this request, and if members were minded to approve the application, then it would be subject to a satisfactory completion of the necessary legal agreements. The lead local flood authority have recommended 2 conditions to deal with the outstanding technical matters already highlighted in the report. These conditions would replace condition 21 as set out on the agenda. And in relation to ecology, no response has yet been received from the County Council's ecology unit. In the event that members resolve to grant planning permission for the proposal, this matter will need to be satisfactorily resolved before issuing a decision notice, and members are asked to delegate this point to officers. So the application is for detailed planning permission for erection of mixed-use building comprising 330 square metres of commercial floor space at ground floor with 10 residential apartments at 1st and 2nd floor levels. That's 4 2-bed and 6 1-bed units, including vehicle access, drainage, car parking, cycle and bin storage, hard and soft landscaping, boundary treatments and associated works following the demolition of the commercial buildings. So we can turn to the slides, please. Thank you. Next slide. Here you can see the site location highlighted in red. Next slide, please. And here we have the proposed layout of the site. Next slide, please. Here you can see the existing street elevations to the Walsworth Road, where you can see the quick fit sign. This is the utilitarian industrial style building, which forms part of the site. And to the left of this is the 1930s building, also part of the application site. Next slide, please. This photograph is looking northeast towards the site along Walsworth Road. Next slide, please. This photo, you can see the 1930s building to the right and the neighbouring Victorian property on the left-hand side. Next slide, please. The proposed elevation drawings of particular note. To the front elevation is the Victorian style detailing. You can see the bay windows, the sill details, the traditional shop fronts. Next slide, please. This is the proposed ground floor plan, which is the 3 commercial units. Next slide, please. And this is the proposed that's the upper story floor plans. So that's 2 first and second floor plans. Next slide, please. And here we have the landscaping plan. You can see some street trees to the front and some hedges and some trees to the back of the site. Next slide, please. This photo is taken from Johnson Place from the east. You can see in the background at the center of the picture, that's the application site. Next slide, please. And this photo is taken from Johnson Place from the west. The white painted utilitarian building in the center of this picture forms the application site. Thank you. That completes presentation.
Thank you very much. Do members have any questions for our officer? Councillor Allen?
Would it be possible to see the layout of the retail units again and ask about deliveries to them and where deliveries would take place? Is that something that you'd be able to answer?
Yes, I will certainly attempt to answer the question for you. So as you can see, there's the access takes from Walsworth Road and the access doors serving the commercial units at the rear of the site. 3 doors I count there. And as anticipated then that deliveries would be to that rear yard area, car parking area. Local Highways Authority haven't raised any concerns relating to arrangements for use of that area for deliveries.
Any other members with a question? Okay, in that case, we've got some registered speakers. We've got 2 objectors who are now going to share a 5-minute speaking slot, which will begin when you do. Thank you.
Dr. Porter and I represent a group of residents who live in front of the proposed development, behind it and adjacent to it. First of all, like to say, in principle, we don't have any objection to a development being there. We welcome a number of the changes that have been made to the proposed development. However, we believe there are 2 compelling planning reasons why this should not go forward at this time. I will address one of them, which is the issue of drainage. Dr. Porter will address the issue of the height of the building. Walsworth Road is awash with water every time it rains. Cambridge Road Railway Bridge, a few hundred yards away, is almost continually flooded when there's torrential rain, despite extensive remedial work a couple of years ago. Earlier this week, drain covers in the road were popping out because of the force of water flowing down the avenue just around the corner from Walsworth Road. As we all know, rain is getting more sporadic and more intense as time goes on due to global warming. This was underlined in a report earlier this week to central government, which I'm sure you are aware of. So we have a major problem in the area already with groundwater. It's widely acknowledged that the sewage system is ancient, and if you look through the documentation that's been issued, it's clear that neither the issue of groundwater nor the issue of sewerage have been resolved by the relevant agencies. That's after nearly a year of discussion, as far as we are aware. The fact that it has taken so long to not reach any conclusion, to us, indicates the seriousness and the complexity of the issues involved. And to us, that provides a compelling argument why the issue of drainage should not be kicked down the road as something to be dealt with by a subcommittee or whatever in a few months' time, but must come back to the full committee where the solutions can be shown to be transparent, durable, and where there are clear lines of responsibility for when things go wrong. We as residents don't wish to suffer the consequences of flooding, let alone foul water flooding. The residents of Hitchin do not wish to suffer from the massive transport disruption that would be caused, and I'm sure the council doesn't want to bear the consequences either. So on that ground, we would ask for this to be deferred until the issues of drainage have been satisfactorily resolved.
Just another point, as far as the creaky infrastructure is concerned, there was a mains leak in Walsworth Road a few months ago, and there had to be a temporary traffic light, and it caused absolute chaos. It's not just a residential area, it's one of the main arteries into the town centre and from north to south. And obviously the development's going to be very close to the station as well, so it has an impact on public transport. The other issue is simply the height of the building. There were lots of objections to the original plans that it was overbearing on its neighbours. And there have been some changes made, and one of those is removing the top story. It was initially meant to be a 4-storey building with dormer windows. It's now a 3-storey building, but nothing has been done to alter the roof height. There are no dormer windows, but north of 35% of the height of the building is taken up with a steeply pitched roof. The social housing at Johnson Place behind, it's not all social housing, but there are 23 flats behind which are social housing occupied by young families. They are going to be even more impacted than people directly across the road by the height of the building, because their gardens will have the light blocked for most of the day.
1 minute left.
Okay, particularly because the orientation of the building and because of the sun moving from east to west, they're going to have the pleasant amenity of their properties really significantly impacted. So, I mean, objections are to the height of the building rather than the building itself. In principle, we don't have a problem with it, but I just cannot understand why the roof height, it has to be so high. I mean, it's acknowledged by the council that the existing building, the main balance of it is single story. It has been for a long, long, long time. We would like the height of the building reduced. Walsworth Road is, the road has mixed heights of buildings throughout.
Thank you very much. And do members have any points of clarification from the speakers? Okay, in that case, we'll move to our member advocate, who is Councillor Ian Albert.
Cheers, thanks, Chair. And obviously, it's particularly sort of poignant. There's an application in my late colleague Judy Billings' ward this evening, and relevant. There are a number of issues, I think, that the objectives have set out, and I perhaps just wanted to emphasise some of those. It is a long-running application. It's had its first birthday earlier this year. And the complexity of it, you'll see there's more than 20 conditions already in this application. It's also worth noting that the applicant sadly refused to have a session with residents more than a year ago, and I think that would have actually helped a lot in actually smoothing the path of here. But the four issues I wanted to deal with: the shops. Now, I think there is much to welcome about the application, and it is much improved from the original one, and it is a better frontage. But there are significant issues, in my view, both about the viability of the shops. This is a main thoroughfare. You'll have seen on the design that whilst there will be deliveries at the back, once you have the deliveries at the back, they'll block in everyone else who wants to leave there. There isn't that much room around there. Walsworth Road is a main thoroughfare, and I don't know where people, if it is going to be shops, are going to park, because it will be just on double yellow lines or single yellow lines immediately outside. I think that is a problem, although I would accept that it's a better frontage than maybe some other places in Walsworth Road. The energy condition, I think, needs to be stronger. That's condition 2023. It does need to, I think we should be specifying much more about heat pumps, solar panels, and not just that we should be trying to sort this all out a little bit later with some sort of a statement to be issued before the development. I think it ought to be done and clear now about that. Georgina's highlighted the height of the building. The updated plans did take away the story, I think, with the additional story, but you'll have seen from the pictures, it's already pretty dark around Johnson's Place. There isn't a need for the building to be uniform height with the building next door. Most of Walsworth Road has got a whole random, fairly higgledy-piggledy heights. That's why it's part of its attraction. So I would actually argue that that could be lower. There's also an issue, I think, just around not only just around privacy that's touched on there, but that light issue that I've emphasised just now. I think that is a really important point, and so I would certainly disagree with paragraph 4.2.15 and the policy D3. The loss of light, I think, is quite significant.
I hope colleagues will have had a chance to have a look at the supplementary document, and I think what's clear to me here is that what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to demolish this building. And then someone's going to work out what a drainage plan should look like. I don't think that's acceptable. This is going to leave a blank, empty site for what possibly months, years, and I frankly a bit of an eyesore. But also, there's a lack of transparency there. Because I think the danger is that this committee doesn't get to decide or look at what a proper drainage plan will look like. It will be delegated elsewhere, out of sight of residents, out of sight of councillors, and I don't think that's really what we need. And then condition 2 there that has been suggested by the Flood Authority, they've already talked about some documents that, to the best of my knowledge, and the planning officer, or hopefully, and I apologise to the planning officer if I'm wrong.
One more minute.
Two of the documents there from Nolan Associates, 23rd of August, 28th of October, I've not seen, and I don't think they've been formally published to know actually what these email responses were. And that's, I think, an important point about transparency. So, Gerald, just to conclude, I think too much is left to be determined out of the sight of residents. There is much to welcome in this application, but I do think that to demolish a building and then try and work something out afterwards isn't acceptable. So I would urge the committee to think about either deferring or possibly refusing, or at least we need to get to the point a drainage plan comes back to this committee to decide and is not left elsewhere to officers. So I'd urge members to take that into account when coming to their decision this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And do members have any points of clarification to Councillor Albert? Okay, well, I'll pass over to Peter, our case officer, to respond to those points, please.
Thanks, Chair. There's quite a lot of points there to cover. In terms of the drainage, obviously, we've been in consultation with the Anglian Water and the lead local flood authority, as has been indicated, for some months. This is mainly due to the resourcing issues at the lead local flood authority. But we resolved a lot of the issues that could be resolved with the lead local flood authority, which is why now you have before you 2 conditions instead of 1, which deals more specifically with the outstanding matters. And these primarily can't be resolved because the drains are covered by existing structures on the site. So it's only until demolition occurs can that information be provided. So that would be the drainage, clarification on the drainage. In terms of the height, obviously we've presented, or you've seen the slides here tonight. The building reflects the immediately adjoining building, which it adjoins the Victorian building. So the report again explains that the height and scale of the building is commensurate with the character of existing buildings in the streets. And also in terms of the general scale, and then the privacy and impacts in terms of light. Again, slides you would have seen show the existing buildings on the site, which largely what they would cover something in the region of 95% of the site, and the photographs also illustrated how the buildings sit on the rear boundary. So there's going to be significant improvement, certainly in terms of the properties to the rear. The local shops, again, this is referred to in the report. So these ground floor units, these commercial units are supposed to respond to the existing neighbourhood shops in the locality. So these are local shops and not sort of destination shops as such. So they are for local people. So typically you'd expect people to be travelling on foot or by bicycle, walking. I'm not sure there was. Final issue was probably around energy, and I think this is pretty a standard issue that way of approaching the energy issue. Obviously, those details are not known at this stage. It's not typical for them to be known at this stage, and officers would be seeking low carbon renewable technologies and higher thermal values on build product from the scheme. So again, those are typically matters that would be dealt with by condition. I think that covers everything. Sorry if I've not addressed it. I'm happy to come back if you need to.
No, I think that was everything. We're coming to the debate on this application now. So can I invite members to contribute? Councillor Allen.
I think, much like our previous item, members of the committee and councillors that are representing need to remember that planning officers are this council's representatives, and we need to respect their knowledge and their experience, and they do know what they're talking about. As far as this goes, I think it's a great looking development for the road. I think it's in keeping. I'm not happy about the parking, but if Highways have said it's okay, then I'm going to have to agree with that. I would like to see the energy recommendations when they come through, but at the moment I would follow the recommendation of the planning officer in granting this.
Okay, so we have a proposer. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Levitt.
Thank you, Chair. I do understand the concerns about the drainage and everything, and the fact that you're going to have to knock it down before you can decide where your drains are going to go. But if anybody's ever been inside this building before it was Quick Fit, when it was used to sell boats at one time in there, there's a huge, that white building at the back is a huge workshop with a great big roof area. I think the officer said about 95% of the area is covered in roofing, which collects a hell of a lot of water and disappears off somewhere at the moment. The new buildings have got a much smaller catchment area for the roof, although there's a car park still collects it. So I can understand the concerns about drainage, but I think that's been adequately covered. The height, yes, there are other buildings fairly big all the way along that road. It's in keeping with some of the newer development along there. The parking, yes, it's not ideal. It doesn't quite meet our standards at new developments, but it's on the sustainability issue. It is very close to the railway station, and it's actually got 10 parking spaces, which is more than we've seen at most of these types of developments lately. We've passed them, or the inspector, in fact, appeal has passed them without any parking spaces whatsoever. So we're not getting, it's not ideal, but it's there. So happy to second on those grounds, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other thoughts? No,
Sorry, it was just to remind members that there has been an amendment to the recommendation, which is to grant subject to the section 106 now. So when you're doing your vote, just remember that there's an amendment to the recommendation.
That's correct. Yeah. So that was set out in the update. So there's contributions sought from the county council around £46,000. So that will need to be secured by a legal agreement.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
My apologies. I thought that was included already. So yes,
Okay.
I'm happy to propose with the amendment.
With the amendment. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, shall we move to the vote then, please, which is to approve with the amendment.
Chair, that motion's carried.
Thank you very much. Okay, we move on. Item number 10, application 22/01990/PNAA at 34 Royal Oak Lane in Purton. And our officer to present is Andrew Hunter. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So there has been only one update to the application, which is that there has been an extension of time agreed to the 5th of December. So if we can now go on to the slides, please. So the site is hatched in red there in the middle of the screen. It's a detached chalet bungalow with a pitched roof. It is in a residential area of detached and semi-detached dwellings, with nearby dwellings being predominantly two-storey dwellings and chalet bungalows, and number 34 is in a group of 4 chalet bungalows stretching down to number 28. The proposal is to add an additional storey to the dwelling by raising its roof and total height by approximately 2 metres. This is an application for prior approval under Class AA of Part 1, Schedule 2 of the Town and Country Planning General Permitted Development England Amendment Number 2 Order 2020, which itself was an amendment to the Town and Country Planning General Permitted Development Order of 2015. Procedurally, AA.3, subparagraph 3 of Class AA states that the local planning authority may refuse an application where, in its opinion, A, the proposed development does not comply with, or B, the developer has provided insufficient information to enable the authority to establish whether the proposed development complies with any conditions, limitations, or restrictions specified in paragraphs AA.1 and AA.2 of Class AA, and subparagraph 15 of AA.3 of Class AA states that the local planning authority may grant prior approval unconditionally or subject to conditions reasonably related to the subject matter of the prior approval, and therefore the application should be determined as to whether it accords with paragraphs AA.1 and AA.2 of Class AA, which is set out in detail in the officer report. And if we go on to the next slide for the relevant plans, so this is the location and block plan. The next plan shows the existing floor and elevation plans. The next plan shows the proposed floor and elevations, and the final plan shows existing and proposed street scenes, showing number 34 in the middle, number 32 on the right, and number 36 on the left. And if we now go on to the photos, please. So this is the front of number 34, and number 32 is visible on the right. And next photo, this shows the whole of the front elevation of number 34, and the north boundary of the site is on the left-hand side. Number 3, this shows the side elevations of numbers 34 and 32, with number 32 on the right. Next photo. This is number 36, Royal Oak Lane, which is separated from the application site of number 34 by a driveway. Photo number 5. This is looking down from number 34, so with number 32 in the middle, and number 30 is sort of towards the back, quite which is quite obscured by trees there. Next photo. Number 30 Royal Oak Lane is on the left. The middle house is number 26, which is in the person conservation area, and that conservation area boundary is on the boundary between number 26 and 28. Next photo, please. This shows number 26 again on the left this time, and on the right are some dwellings on the other side of Royal Oak Lane. Next photo. This shows numbers 45, 47 and 53 Royal Oak Lane, with 47 in the middle. And last photo, please. This shows numbers 53 to 59 Royal Oak Lane, and That's the end of the photos, and the recommendation is to grant prior approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do members have any questions for Andrew? Councillor Bloxham.
Not exactly a question, but I have to apologise because I've just realised who the applicant is, and I do know Colin, and certainly have been had an interest within his work with the company that he's got. Hi, Colin. So I'd pass to you. I don't know whether that's a reason for me to be not to be included.
Sorry, that threw me. I wasn't expecting that.
When I read the papers, didn't read the name. I just didn't look at something like that.
That's fine. It's not a BPI per se, but there is a declarable interest, and I think there's enough members here for us to not worry about quorum. So probably best if you sit this one out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and well spotted. Any questions for our officer? Andrew, you've got a light on. No, okay. Councillor Levitt.
The height in relation to the number 36 and the ones opposite, is it taller than those or similar height to those?
It is, yeah, the height is very similar to number 36. I think in my report, I will just go to the relevant paragraph where I have where I did do a comparison of how the proposed height is relates to other nearby dwellings. So the proposed height would be 8.48 meters, and this and number 36 Royal Oak Lane has a height of 8.3 meters. Number 38 is 8.6 meters high. Numbers 45 and 43, which are opposite, are approximately 8.5 meters high, and numbers 35 to 41 Royal Oak Lane are again approximately 8.5 meters high.
And if I could ask just one as well, is it correct to say that in this kind of application that roof height is partially determined by the fact that it has to have the same pitch angle as the roof of the existing dwelling, only elevated by the extension?
Yes, that's right. It's a requirement of paragraph AA or AA.2 to C, class AA.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay, we have a registered speaker speaking in objection to the application, and that is Diane Burley. Good evening, and if you'd like to make your representation, you've got 5 minutes, which will start when you begin.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm here on behalf of the Purton Parish Council. Our main concern is the proposed roof height, which we believe will adversely alter the character and appearance of this section of Royal Oak Lane. At the now reduced height of 9.48, it would no longer be one of the tallest buildings in Purton. Originally, the application was for 9.48 metres, but it's certainly still amongst the tall end of the spectrum. Mr. Hunter, in his report to you, is correct to note the variety of heights and styles of dwellings in Royal Oak Lane. And in fact, that's one of its charms and leads to mini character areas within the one street. One of those mini character areas is formed by the bungalow and chalet bungalows that are 28 to 34 Royal Oak Lane. They're all of the same date, although not identical. They sit well back from the road behind a wide green verge. I'm afraid the photographs were this summer, so it's brown, but it's a wide green verge, which verge is recommended by your conservation area consultants to be included in the Royal Oak Lane Conservation Area. There are trees and shrubs, as you saw, in front of these dwellings. However, as you saw from the photographs, number 34 will not be hidden from public view. The trees are deciduous, so the house is fully visible to the street for most of the year, and indeed, as you saw in the summer, fully visible then. And that's the point, really, the point of our objection. For all the variety of houses and roof heights in Royal Oak Lane, number 34 is clearly part of a distinct group of houses. Changing the roof line of number 34 so that it is 2 meters taller than the remaining group of houses would be completely out of character for the row of dwellings which currently form a very pleasing group of low-rise housing close to the entrance to the conservation area. The applicant and Mr. Hunter refer to number 36 Royal Oak Lane, which is a substantial home. The line of dwellings in this direction from number 34, going out towards Holwell Road, is interrupted first by the garden to the side of number 34, and then by a road, not a driveway. It's part of Royal Oak Lane. By a road constructed to the properties behind number 34. And again, they're behind 32, 30, and 28. Nor does number 36 have the large green verge to the front that is typical of 34 to 28. Thus, the relationship of number 34 is very clearly to 32, 30, and 28, not to number 36. We believe that that the neighbouring 32 to 28 properties could validly argue also that the dominant appearance and height, 2 meters taller than number 32, might also constitute a loss of amenity, which is a ground for refusing your prior approval. You can see from the plans how close to number 32 number 34 actually is. And to support this, I quote very briefly, it's all set out in our written response, the judgment of Mr. Justice Holgate when interpreting the regulations. And he says impact on amenity, we think it will have an adverse impact on amenity, is not limited to overlooking privacy or loss of light, all of which are well covered in Mr. Hunter's report. Mr. Justice Holgate says it means what it says. And our view, and the view of number 32, is that they will feel overwhelmed by a property that's suddenly 2 meters taller than itself.
1 more minute.
Thank you. We also questioned the proposed roof pitch. If it was necessary to raise the roof to 9.48 meters in order to keep the roof pitch as required by the regulations, we wonder how reducing the roof height is still going to keep the same pitch. Now, I'm no engineer, but simply ask that you satisfy yourself that this is possible. Finally, should you grant prior approval, we would ask for 2 conditions. One, that any first floor should be in matching brick and not cladding to match the remaining chalet bungalows, and that further GPDO rights should be subject to an Article 4 direction in respect of further development into the new roof space. Any such further development without scrutiny, we think, would increase the adverse impact on Royal Oak Lane. And finally, I'd like to thank Councillor Strong for bringing this matter to your attention and calling it in. It's the first application for Burton under these regulations, and we felt it was very important that the committee has a chance to consider it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do members have any points of clarification for the speaker? Okay, well, in that case, we'll come to Claire Strong, the member advocate, who's speaking in objection.
Well, good evening, everybody. This is an unusual application, and I believed it was actually worthy of consideration by the Planning Committee, as it is a GPDO, General Permitted Development Order, Class A. Something not often seen at committee. In fact, it's the first time I've actually had to go and read this regulation. My reason for the call-in is to support the objections from the parish council and neighbours due to the proposed height of the extension and the impact the extended building will have on the street scene and amenity. When the first set of plans were sent for consultation, there were numerous objections to the height, and the applicant has reduced the height, but this does still call into question whether the new height still meets the regulations on the pitch. However, even with the reduction, this is still a large extension and it does transform the street scene, particularly of the row of the 4 chalet bungalows. I would draw your attention to page 153 of the office report when considering the impact of the neighbouring premises and the locality. And the case officer says, these factors, in my view, would mean that the proposed increase in height would not be significantly noticeable in the context of the wider street scene and locality. And he goes on to say that it would not appear harmfully out of keeping with the character and appearance. But as you have heard from a member of the parish council who lives in the village, her view, and that of the objectors, many of who live nearby and see the street scene, they differ. Now, I went and read the procedure for applications for prior approval, because I didn't actually know that there were such procedures to be followed. But anyway, I went and read them, and it says in those procedures, the local planning authority must, when determining an application, take into account any representations made to them as a result of any notice given under subparagraph 5 and any consultation under subparagraph 6 or 8, and have regard to the National Planning Policy Framework issued by the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government in February 2019, so far as relevant to the subject matter of the prior approval, as if the application were a planning application. If this was a planning application, it would look at whether the proposal fits in with the neighbouring properties and the street scene. The proposal would also be tested against Purton Neighbourhood Development Plan, which we recently adopted as part of our local plan. In the Purton's Design and Character Policy, number 2, it states that any development should recognise, respect and reinforce the distinct local rural character of both Purton Village and Parish, set out in the character assessment statement as evidence-based. And that's in relation to the height, scale, spacing, layout, orientation, design detail and building materials, with particular consideration given to those elements reflected in dwellings in the immediate vicinity of the proposed development. And in 2.8 of that same policy, preserve or enhance the special character or appearance of a conservation area or an area adjoining a conservation area, which this is, and to respond to existing scale, height and character of the conservation area, including boundary treatments around and within new develops, and should reflect upon distinct local character in relation to design and materials. Also within the plan, there is a policy in regard to residential extensions, and it states that residential extension proposals will be supported if the scale, height and roof form are complementary to the host building and the character of the street scene. And it also has in 3.3, they are made of materials that are sensitive and complementary to the host buildings. Therefore, committee, I would ask that you ask yourself the question, does this application change the character of this section of Royal Oak Lane? And if the committee feels this would have a negative impact, then I would ask the committee refuses on the grounds that it is not in character with the existing street scene due to its height and appearance and the decrease on amenity. Or alternatively, perhaps ask the officer to go back to the applicant and see if there is a way to further reduce the ridge height by means of perhaps not insisting that the pitch of the existing dwelling house is retained, because that certainly seems to be what's driving the height upwards. And perhaps look at, rather than having a permitted development, perhaps ask that a formal planning application comes forward instead with a plan that is more in keeping with the street scene and a reduced height of the roof. Thank you for listening. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. And are there any questions? It doesn't look like it. Thank you. So if we come back to Andrew to address any points that have been raised so far.
Thank you, Chair.
I do beg your pardon. Oh, how does that look? Sorry, we have a supporter, and I do beg your pardon. I missed the line on my notes there. So, yes, Colin Weatherall Morris, you are going to speak in support of the application, and you've got 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Is this working? Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so my name's Colin Weatherall Morris, and I'm the agent applicant for this house home project. I just wanted to sort of talk about sort of the reason for referral. You know, first of all, the main point that sort of has come up in objection is height, and the use of cladding as well. First of all, in terms of the use of cladding, this doesn't form part of the proposal. The building is sort of going to be sort of extended using facing brickwork, and this is described in the planning statement, paragraph 9.1, and this has been acknowledged in the case officer's report as well. So that's a moot point, I think, in terms of design and appearance. Cladding's not part of the proposal, just to satisfy that point. And then secondly, like in terms of heights, you know, 40 degrees is the pitch of the existing roof, and the proposal in the second revised design is still 40 degrees to meet the criteria of the Class AA. This was achieved, you know, through reducing the eave height and reducing the head height of the first floor windows to reduce the overall height from the original application or original proposal by a third. So, you know, the addition to the existing roof height is a mere 2 meters as proposed currently. I don't think I need to recap sort of Andrew's assessment of the mixed sort of heights of the properties at that end of Royal Oak Lane. You know, the chalet bungalow forms, you know, an end of a row, and as Andrew clearly states, you know, this bookends the sort of the step change to number 36 Royal Oak Lane, which is a significant 2-story dwelling. Yeah, so there's a progression in sort of stepped ridge heights to the street scene. And I think more generally as well, you know, the property is not of good repair, and sort of the additions that we're making or proposing to make will be a betterment to the street scene. Won't have a harmful impact on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And do members have any points of clarification that they'd like to raise with the supporter? Yes, Councillor Nolan.
Yeah, just a point of clarification on the use of the cladding there. So you've made the statement there that it would be brick rather than cladding that's being used, but the documents, the designs as submitted show cladding being in place on the first story. So could you just confirm then that in terms of what will be done, it will be brick, outer brick used rather than any cladding, and that won't then be provided later on as part of the construction?
That's exactly correct. So the planning statement supports the yeah, thank you. Yes, exactly correct. The planning statement supports the application, describes the external finishes as facing brickwork to match the existing building. There's no mention of cladding. The hatching in the proposal in the drawing just merely dictates the area of new wall as opposed to describing a particular finish. Yeah, the intention as per the planning statements is for facing brickwork.
Are there any other points of clarification? Okay, now we will turn to Andrew to address the points that have been raised so far.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think many of the points raised I have been covered in my report, but I'll sort of go over the main ones, which is that in my view, I don't consider that the proposal will have a harmful impact on the setting of the conservation area, as I think fundamentally it's too far away from it. It's not on the boundary of the conservation area, and the amount of development itself is a fairly small increase to what is a fairly large chalet bungalow in terms of its height, I would say. The existing group of 4 chalet bungalows aren't listed buildings or in a conservation area. They're not all identical, though I do accept they are of a fairly similar height. in my view, there aren't any planning reasons to object to the increase in height to number 34, and while its height would increase, being on the end of the group, it would have a lesser impact in that context than if it were, say, in the middle. And taking a wider view of an assessment of the street scene, it would be comparable to the heights of many other two-story dwellings that are very close by, to it. And it's also set back quite far from the road, with some tree screening from trees and vegetation. And I don't consider either that the proposal would adversely affect the grass verges because of the distance that the house is set back from the road. I also don't consider that there would be adverse impacts on number 32 because it's an upwards extension. It's behind the rear elevation of number 32, and the number 32 only has one small side window facing number 34, which won't be any more adversely affected by the upwards extension than the impact it already has from the existing house. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we come to the debate now. Who would like to start? Councillor Allen.
The bungalow is not in a conservation area. It's not listed. It's a mixed street scene. I see absolutely no reason that we can't approve this. Can I propose that we approve?
Thank you very much. We've got a proposer, Councillor Levitt.
Yeah, happy to second. I was going to say something similar. It will have an impact on the in-street scene, but nothing I feel it's significant. The house opposite number 47, I think it is a very similar height and hasn't got all the greenery in front of it. And the ones to the right of that, which I think are like numbered 53 onwards or something like that. Again, they've got large areas of brick block work to the front, as is 47. This is retaining the greenery. So there's a substantial gap between it and 32 and 36. So yes, it will have an impact. So happy, but not adverse. So happy to second, Chair.
Okay. Any other contributions from the members? Okay, in that case, we'll go to the vote, which is proposed by Councillor Allen, seconded by Councillor Levitt to approve the recommendation of the officer.
Chair, that motion's carried.
Thank you very much. And that concludes our business for this evening. Next meeting is on the 15th of December. Thank you very much.